Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. 808 exactly news and views this Monday morning, the 19th of December 2022. I'm joined by an amazing young lady, Aisha Kaji. Always wonderful to pick her brains because she's just amazing. Always love talking to her. She is so knowledgeable, but I guess that is part of her work. We are looking at the issue around some almost 4,500 delegates finally started their voting on Sunday afternoon, a full day later than scheduled on the official 5-day program after the party's constitution was amended to add a second deputy secretary general. And of course, that's an important question. We need to understand why. It used to be the six, the elected six, and now it is seven. And we are also going to be looking at all of the horse trading that was going on, possibly even brown or white envelopes that were exchanged during the horse trading. I don't know if that was visible at all, or was that down pre the actual elective conference. But let's dig in, let's understand where we're at as far as the conference is concerned. I was very, very disappointed that it started on day one. It kind of started almost 5 hours later than intended. And you kind of ask yourself about this tardiness. Is this then the party that are meant to be leading the country? I mean, they have such a poor track record, and yet they have such great support. And you kind of ask yourself why. What are people thinking? Can't they see the wood for the trees? But okay, those are my personal opinions. Let's get to the heart of the matter with Aisha Kaji. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Julie?
I'm good, but you can hear the frustration in my opening statements. You can hear that I'm very frustrated about the ruling party, their elective conference, the way they're leading us, where we're at right now. And I question the confidence of the masses as far as the ruling party is concerned. You may have different views than I do, but I question why. Can we not see the wood for the trees? Can we not see that we possibly heading for disaster if we don't hold our leaders to account? And we've not done that yet. And the two top contenders for the job, Cyril Ramaphosa, I've always admired him, but the fact of the matter is that he has Pala Pala hanging over him. And then Zwelmi Kize, he hasn't yet been called to account for the PPE scandal. And these
Yes.
are I shouldn't be using this word, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. These are the scoundrels that are meant to be leading the biggest party in the country and possibly leading the country going forward. Salaam alaikum once again, Aisha Kaji. After that very long introduction of mine, venting my frustrations, over to you regarding the 55th elective conference of the ANC.
Well, Julie, wa alaikum salam. As you've said, it feels almost as though the ANC members are voting for the lesser of two evils in their mind. And as you've also said, it comes down to whether, people think the digital vibe scandal around the PPE tenders during the COVID crisis when Mr. Nkize was health minister, whether that is actually more serious than the president's current scandal around the Pala Pala game reserve. So, I spoke to one person who didn't want to go on the record this weekend, and I think he summed it up quite neatly in that he said, yes, both people appear to be corrupt. But on the one hand, the president's scandal is regarding his own money, whereas the Minister Mkize's scandal is regarding public money. And I said to him, but what about if it's true about the president, what about unpaid taxes? That's also public money.
Absolutely.
And he said, yes, but on the whole, the scale of the corruption when it comes to the use of public funds is far more serious when it comes to Mr. Mkhize than when it comes to Mr. Ramaphosa. There is also, of course, the perception that Mr. Mkhize is part of the radical economic transformation faction within the ANC. And we've seen a lot of chaos this weekend. The ANC said we shouldn't be using the word chaos in the media, but we really have seen a lot of chaos compared to previous conferences. We've seen delays in registration. We've seen lots of horse trading and infighting. The latter is not that unusual, but certainly the level of acerbity this year has been far more than in previous years. We saw Mr. Ramaphosa's state of the party speech, if you can call it that, this organizational report, very much, disrupted by the Zuma faction. We saw Mr. Zuma come in late during that, refuse to sit with the other former presidents and go and sit on the floor with the candidates who were being so disruptive. So we saw lots of interesting things happen on the first day of the conference, on day one. And then on day two, it appeared that there was still lots of horse trading going on, which carried on until yesterday. And then finally, there appeared to be final slates of some sort. And we were told towards the end of the day yesterday that the results, there would be no more media briefings, and the results would be announced early on Monday morning at some point. And that's what we're currently waiting for. But it does seem that even if Mr. Ramaphosa does survive this as president of the ANC, that he will be dealing with a top seven, as you've said, or the other six in the top seven, largely belonging to the other faction within the ANC. And therefore, he's going to have quite a lot of internal conflict.
So, having said that, Aisha, uh, question number one: why top seven as opposed to in the past top six? How's that going to change the dynamics of, the top seven, so to speak? And being the majority of the top seven being belonging to the RET faction. How difficult is that going to make Ramaphosa's job going forward? What does it tell us as the general public as far as RET is concerned? Do we need to be concerned? And then added to all of those questions, was it a surprise at all that Lindiwe Sisulu was nominated? It was almost I, I was surprised, I might add. I was very surprised that she was not nominated, because she was very vociferous about her position and her whole take on the elective conference. And of course, she has attacked Ramaphosa in the past. So all of those issues, what does that lead us to believe? How is all this going to play out? And I'm also kind of wondering, what does that say for the general election 2024?
It actually should make us very worried about the general election 2024. It should make us worried in the sense that, firstly, on the issue of a second general secretary or deputy general secretary, it appears that has just been, a way for the ANC to essentially create an extra position. Although the ANC says it needs an extra general secretary, I'm not so sure about that. And it's also a way for the ANC to actually ensure that at least a couple of women get onto the top six, because other than the two nominations for deputy general secretary, Tina Jumat Peterson and Gwen Ramahopa, there were very few other women on the top end of the slate for the ANC generally. And, it's supposed to be committed to 50-50 gender parity. So that's one reason. I don't think it's really a reason of having to do a whole lot of extra work, etc. Secondly, on the issue of Lindiwe Sisulu, also on the issue of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, etc., and other people who were nominated from the floor, yes, I think it was a surprise to many people that Lindiwe Sisulu hasn't actually been nominated or successful in nomination for any of the major positions. I think it's a hopefully a death knell to her hopes of those top positions. And I say hopefully because she's been a disruptive and divisive factor within the ANC ever since prior to the Zuma presidency. And she's shown contempt for the party line in Parliament this week, with the just opting to not be there, as did Mr. Mkhize himself. Ms. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, voted yes when the party line was no. So we're seeing that there is a great deal of opposition at the top levels of the ANC to Mr. Ramaphosa. There's enmity there. And really, the one thing that needs to happen, probably, and it will be the mark of whether this second term, if Mr. Ramaphosa does get a second term as president of the ANC, I'm not talking about president of the party, is to see whether Mr. Ramaphosa then actually needs and has the will to deal with the enmity within his own party and to actually end up with a cabinet, and an NEC with whom he can work. And that's particularly true of cabinet. And I think we will see early in January, if Mr. Ramaphosa survives as party president, we will see a reshuffle of cabinet. Even if he doesn't survive, we may see a reshuffle of cabinet, because really this situation has been going on for too long. It's untenable. It means that he's hamstrung. He's unable to make decisions with the full support of his executive. And that is what a president needs in order to be functional. His State of the Party address made all the expected excuses about why targets and the goals and aims of prior conferences, etc., haven't been reached, particularly on the economy, etc. And yes, there's been COVID, and yes, there's been, a very, very small growth in the economy, if anything. And yes, we've seen greater unemployment and greater crime statistics, etc. But the reason for this actually must be taken seriously by government. This, as you've said about the ESCOM debacle as well, government needs to take this seriously, and government is currently hamstrung because the executive is not in full support of the president.
And sadly, I've been talking over the past few weeks. I've been talking to political analysts, to economists. I've been talking to heavyweights from industry, etc. And, we've been told that the country is on the brink of collapse. And that is very, very concerning. We also know that our tax base is very small. It's people like you and I that are part of the tax base that allow South Africa to run smoothly. I kind of want, and we need to hold these people to account, because it's our tax money that is enabling the country to function, albeit in a very disastrous fashion. Um, so yes, we need to. I'm all for holding these people to account, and the reason I say that is, thank you indeed, Khadija Valley, for your comment this morning. This is what Khadija has to say. She says the journalist, obviously she's referring to me, should keep her opinions to herself and conduct her interview without emotion. Thank you indeed for that, Khadija. But I think in a situation like this, where our country is, where we're literally on our knees. We've got the ESCOM debacle. We've got large scale wholesale corruption, at all levels in government. And you see the poorest of the poor trying to eke out a living. And there is such a disparity between the haves and the have nots. How can you not become emotional when you see the large scale corruption happening around us? And despite all of that, our people on the ground are still absolutely dedicated and loyal to the people they believe are great leaders.
Unfortunately, that's true. And as you say, Julie, it's a situation. It may well be a comment directed at me. And I agree with you that, every South African cannot help but be emotional around this issue. A lot of what we're seeing at the moment with regard to ESCOM, with regard to the inability of government bureaucracies to function with regard to service delivery generally, is really, should be laid at the door of state capture. And of course, the state capture began under Mr. Zuma's watch and escalated under that watch and really penetrated into all arms of government. So, it is the truth of the matter is that this current government is dealing with that deeply rooted corruption, nepotism, cronyism, and of course the ANC's famous term, cadre deployment, um,
Absolutely.
throughout all levels of government. But what has happened is it means that firstly, there's no money for the government to function properly, as you've said, very small tax base. And secondly, the money that was there has been looted to such an extent, and the corruption is so endemic that it is impossible for the bureaucracy to function when it comes to service delivery. And that is why it's high time that house cleaning happened. You mentioned, for example, that Mr. Mkhize hasn't even been called to account yet regarding the digital vibe scandal. And it really has to come down to, the viewpoint that everybody, whether it's the president, whether it's a minister, whether it's somebody high up in the judiciary or in government or in the National Assembly, everybody should be called to account when it comes to the looting of the treasury.
Let me also just add, Aisha, that I'm all for second chances. I don't believe that if you've done wrong, that you should be condemned for life. But when you are allowed the second chance or multiple chances on fixing what you broke, however big or small, the damage was, is you need to be true to your word. You need to pay some form of reparation. You need to pay back the money if you have stolen large sums of money. And, in that same vein, if you are given an opportunity to fix or to do right what was wrong on your watch, then yes, not only a second chance, but multiple chances will be afforded to you because we're all human. We all err. We all have a huge ego, and we allow our egos to overtake our best intentions. So, yeah, second chances, need to be given, but we've not seen anybody account for all the brokenness in this country, all the lying, the thieving, the raping of the country, because that's where we're at. And just one more example I'd like to add here, and it's really a sad state of affairs. When you look at the situation in Durban, the beaches, a few years ago, every year in December, I talk to the National Sea, the NSIR, I think it is, National Sea Institute, Rescue Institute, and we talk about safety of the beaches and holiday safety in general. And every year without fail, over the past so many years, they always boasted about the fact that Durban is one of the destinations that enjoy almost 100% blue flag status as far as their beaches are concerned. Look at the stink right now. It is absolutely disgusting because budgets that were allocated for aging and repair of aging of infrastructure can't be accounted for. We don't know where the money is. And look at the state of KZN. It is a crying shame. That being said, another one of my little statements that is a really sore point, uh, and you can respond to that. Let's also look at the issue around where on earth did Tina Juma Peterson pop up from all of a sudden? She was nowhere to be seen or heard. And where and how does she pop up? Is this again an issue of cadre deployment? Is this about favors being paid back? You owed me, and payback time.
Yes, unfortunately, Julie, again, someone said to me the other day that not a single person on the ANC slate in either camp is actually totally clean. And while I don't know some of those people from, some of the people nominated from the provinces, for example, for certain positions are not very well known, but I can certainly believe that there is a taint of some corruption around almost every member on that slate. Unfortunately, that is the situation we're dealing with on the ground. I mean, look at it, Julie. If we have two candidates for the president of the ruling party, both of them embroiled in some sort of scandal, in some sort tainted by some sort of wrongdoing, does it not give carte blanche to the rest of the country, let alone the rest of the ANC or the rest of government? Does it not actually say this is acceptable? Because those vying for the highest position within the ruling party and ultimately for the highest position within the land are corrupt themselves in one way or another.
This comes down to conversations we've had over time. We know that Africa was colonized by the West, and over time, all of the countries, the majority of the countries, have gained their independence. This will be my last statement and question to you, Aisha, because our next guest, that is Faisal Patel, is standing by for the interview. But this is an important issue. And over time, every time a country, an African country, gain their independence. And one can argue that this happens in the East as well, the Middle East and the Far East as well. Every time an African country gained their independence, a couple of years down the line, 10, 20 years down the line, the corruption sets in or had set in, and the countries were made almost ungovernable. And they've had ongoing wars. A lot of those northern African countries have had ongoing wars because of power struggles and everybody wanting to get their hands on the natural resources of the country and get their hands on the money of the people, the money that belongs to the people of the land. And for a long while, we've been having these discussions as well, that South Africa is going to go the same way, not during Mandela's tenure, but right after. I think we started seeing the cracks. Your thoughts? Would I be spot on by suggesting all of that? And I mean, when Zimbabwe was going through that very, very bad phase with ZANU PF, etc., I mean, people were saying this is the same road South Africa is going to be following. And lo and behold, it seems that is where we are. That is where we're at.
That's a very gloomy outlook, Julie. But unfortunately, I think that if the rot isn't stopped very, very urgently, yes, we will be going down that route, unfortunately. And I must add here that while it is the big names amongst the politicians who get embarrassed and named and shamed, although they don't seem to have much humility to admit guilt. And you've spoken about second chances there. But the other side of the coin is that the people who benefit, or those who benefit, are large corporations, banks, business people, corrupt business people around the world, and governments that want to see our countries fail because they want access to the resources of the country, or they want to control the country in terms of global geopolitics. And that is what we should be guarding against. That is what people like Chris Hani told us to guard against. And unfortunately, those dire predictions appear to be coming true. And we seem to be, as a populace, very, very apathetic towards this. We don't seem to be doing very much about it.
I wonder if that is not the legacy of apartheid. But I do know that my next guest is standing by. Would love to chat with you again to take this discussion further and to talk about the issue of accountability and how civil society can rise up and start holding corrupt politicians to account, knowing that they have very, very deep and strong ties, as you've just indicated, to Western governments, simply because Western governments have a deep interest in our country. And as you've said, it's all about geopolitics. But Aisha, as always, a pleasure talking with you. And I do know that you're on your way on holiday today. I do hope you're not going to KZN because the situation there is very dire.
I was there a couple of weeks ago to do some work, some training. And yes, the situation is dire, such that, people are even afraid, some of them, to actually walk on the sand because they say that they've heard, comments that children have gotten ill just from playing on the sand. And that's such a sad, sad state of affairs along the entire KZN coastline, but particularly in central Durban.
Aisha Kadri, research fellow at AFRISA, thank you indeed. Always, always a pleasure talking with you. Inshallah, we will talk again sometime soon. Stay safe, have a wonderful break, and till the next time, as always, keep us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And the same to you, Julie, and everybody at
Alhamdulillah.
Salam Media.
Alhamdulillah. Ameen. 8:34 news and views right here on Salam Media, 19th of December 2022. Standing by to talk to us is journalist, award-winning journalist Faisal Patel.